I'm going to move on to Chris Harrison here. Chris, I think we've got some Twitter feedback. I'd be interested in just bringing that into the equation.
Yes, Dennis, we have a question there from David Lehman, who's asking about construction skills. Is saying, what is the executive and what are the parties doing to support and invest in construction skills? He sees this as a big issue for the industry.
Okay, Paula, could you take this one?
Well, I'll probably put on my personal hat here today. We, in my day job as Director of Greater Village Regeneration Trust, we have a project called Tree Training Centre, which delivers construction skill training to 30 young people every week. We found out yesterday that we're no longer being funded and we're going to be closing the doors next week. So rather than investing in young people who are in the construction sector, the reality of it is that with the budget cuts, so many more of the schemes that are actually existing out there are actually going to close. So it's catastrophic, because the reality of it is, as Sammy mentioned about it, the capital projects will all have what are called, well, you'll know, our social inclusion clauses. And it's very important that we train up our young people and then ensure that there's the referral process into the likes of Girtwood or Waterfront Hall or the National Stadium redevelopment. So, you know, the investment in the young people, and especially because not all young people want to leave school and go to university. Not all of them want to go and work in retail or hospitality. There is a segment in society of young people who they have a skill base there, and if you introduce them to tiling or plastering or bricklaying, a light bulb goes on, and they certainly have found their place, and it's good for confidence. So again, it's very short term, the way we deal with a lot of this stuff, and I would say that I think that as our Dell Minister, although obviously he holds the purse strings, I think he's very disappointed with the allocation he has to give out to such schemes.
Okay, anybody else, any wish to contribute to this question about skills?
Well, two things. I mean, first of all, in our construction projects, and many of you will know this from your own experience, with public procurement, we've tried to use public procurement to encourage the industry to invest in skills, and the social clauses in many of the public sector projects are designed to do that. And secondly, of course, as Paul has said, and actually the Dell budget has been reasonably well protected. Whether or not all of the priorities have been set by the Minister, or priorities which I would have set are another matter, but through that considerable money has gone in, especially to the level and training and at the level of skills that Paul has described, because those are one of the areas where the Deputy Minister has identified shortages.
Okay. So, question here? Andy, you're going to give us another question?
Yeah, thanks, Dennis. I've got a slightly more sector-specific question. Inward investment is at least partly dependent on the availability of Grade A office space, which is currently pretty much lacking around Greater Belfast. Clearly there's a role for the private sector in this regard, but what can the executive do to help?
Well, I think just to augment that a little bit, I mean, we even had criticism from, I think, Invest Northern Ireland about this issue themselves, so that's government itself criticising the issue. So just maybe, Tim, could you start?
Well, I'll talk specifically about Belfast City Council perspective, because it is Belfast that we have the lack of Grade A office space. And I know we've got the City Keys and the Harbour Commission, but again, if you read the Belfast City Centre Regeneration Strategy, the Burge report clearly identifies that as a very significant issue about the lack of A-grade office space. And we are actively now engaged as a council with Invest and I to see how we can actually tackle that. Because obviously City Keys development is important, but there's many potential investors who want to be in the city centre. They actually think, you know, some people might agree, City Keys is actually a step too far for them. So we're actively working and talking to Invest and I about how we take a lead in trying to provide that A-grade office space, because it's vital. There's investors who want to come into the city centre, but we don't have access to that. We're also, obviously, in terms of the transport hub that TransLink are involved in, City Council again is actively engaged with them to see, can we create something much bigger out of that, which includes Grade A office space. So we want to actively play a part in trying to fill some of those gaps, and through the Burge report, through the economic strategy, through the Smith and Rooney report, in terms of how we provide a singular focus around inward investment as a council, I think we can live up to that part. And we have some of the financial instruments now through borrowing powers, maybe to make some of those things a reality.
Okay, Danny, have you any concerns, given that you're very pro-business?
Yes, I think it's one of the two. I mean, we're talking about corporation tax. We've got to have the grade A office space. We've got to have the skills. But if you come back to the office space, I'm fully aware that we also got to look at all the land that actually government owns and has in Belfast and in the rest of Northern Ireland. There's a whole mass of land sitting there that's not being used. We should be looking at a way at making that available, whether it's selling to put funds into the budget or whether it is doing your PPI. There's a whole mass that could be done much, much quicker, which would release the ground to people to then invest in and build it. And with that, you've got to get the infrastructure right. Because if your roads and your rail and your linkages through Belfast, which Tim's just touched on, that's got to work, because that, of course, is where people decide where they want to place their offices. And we've got to therefore help. So we've got to do it all together. You can't just choose one bit but not the other.